Just to let you know, we are live on YouTube. Sound check for YouTube. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sound check. Sound check. Testing 1, 2, 3. Sound test for YouTube.
Dave, is that you, Dave Wise? Having your hand up?
Dave Skype.
Oh, Scott, how are you?
Not bad.
You put your hand up for what?
I don't know. This is my first Zoom chat I've ever done, so I don't know if I was supposed to, hear all rise, and press a hand, or I don't know. I'm working with this technology.
Well, that's okay. No, because I saw you raise your hand, so I wasn't sure why. But the meeting has not started yet, so it's not going to start till 10 o'clock. So we'll let you know when is your turn to speak. You are speaking on item number 1. Is that that's
I'm the first one to speak? Yes.
Okay. Cool. All right. We'll talk to you after.
Okay. I was just checking out again because I don't know how this works well. Like I said, this is my first Zoom chat. I just wanted to make sure I was up and on. So okay.
You're up and you're on and you're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Caroline.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We were listening. I thought that was Dave Wise singing. So I said, oh my God, Dave Wise is so happy in the morning. So
No, I only say blah, 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 I believe.
I always sing, I apologize.
oh, that's all right. That's okay.
Dave Wise's contribution to meetings is this:
Yeah.
all the way through a planning advisory committee meeting, he clicked his pen nonstop.
Would you rather I test my mic or click my pen today? Which one would you rather I do today?
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ERAC's meeting for November 4th, 2021. I'd like to read this statement. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendment listed as item 2 and 3 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submission today or written submissions before the amendment are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of recipient of the application for zoning and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comment on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on November 10, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. So I'd like to welcome all of you to our meeting this morning. Mr. Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Councillor Meehan,
I'm here.
Councillor Moffat,
Here.
Councillor DeRuse,
I'm here.
Councillor Gower,
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts,
Here.
and Chair El Shantiri.
Present.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So declaration of interest. See none. Confirmation of minutes 26 and meeting of 7 October 2021 of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Is the minute carried?
Carried.
Thank you.
Good.
So we'll go through the agenda. We have 3 items on the agenda. Item number 1 is Public Works and Environmental Service Department, Parks, Forestry and Stormwater Service. Item number 1, amendment to the engineer's report for the East Savage Municipal Drain. And I believe we have a gentleman who will be speaking on this item. So we're going to hold this item. Item number 2 is Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Planning Service. Item number 2, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 5651 First Line Road in Rideau Goober. And this is the zoning amendment for phase 3. We have no speaker. I believe we have the applicant with us and they will be happy if we just carry this item. So since we have no speaker, no submission, can we carry item number 2?
Just a quick question for the applicant, if I could.
Go ahead, Councilor Murphy.
All right, thanks. So I appreciate the applicant addressing concerns that were raised by the community in terms of lot coverage, understanding that that the lot coverage for the bungalow towns was necessary in order to achieve that type of home model. But just a question about design. So obviously, I think there's a long history to Minto's community in Manotick, and design features and elements were a key part of that discussion from the start, going back to 2008 and through the OMB process. And of course, phase one of the development is quite important in terms of its design and how everything sort of doesn't necessarily match one another, and it's quite a very village feel to the development. Yes, it's a higher density than we're used to, but I mean, there's certainly some rural village design elements. With as you move forward, we've noticed that there's this concern in the community that there's kind of a drawback from that you're starting to use less natural materials and more vinyl type materials on the fronts of the buildings, and that hasn't been the case generally with phase one. So just curious on what your thoughts are on that, or what you're doing to remain consistent with the design elements that the community is expecting and has been discussed for so many years.
Good morning, Chair. It's Nadia DeSanti. I'm planner with WSP and the agent on behalf of Minto Communities, and through you, Mr. Chair, and our client, Carl Fernie's at this meeting as well. There are several designs, house designs, that are available to homeowners for purchase. And so there has been a bit of a trend from the new homeowners to select more of a modern look and feel, but there are home designs that are similar to previous phases that are available to purchasers. So I don't know, Carl, if you would like to add anything else to that comment.
Thanks, Nadia. If everyone can hear me, yes. As Nadia mentioned, we do have multiple, we have 3 elevations for kind of every product. And what we have seen is a trend over the past couple of years to go a little bit more with the modern look, the darker siding. But I think even what you've seen in the past year, and I think if you notice this in new communities, you're starting to see a return back to, even if you look at our Chio Dream Home this year, white siding, a little bit more of a, let's say, a craftsman look, right? So we're always kind of modifying our housing product and our elevations. So we will continue to be working on that, Councillor.
All right, thanks. I think we just want to see some consistency. I mean, I think the arts and crafts models on your first phase were quite popular, and I think we're blending in well. Also, I think we've seen other examples in Manotick where instead of using vinyl siding, people have gone with the hardy board siding. It's still a plastic siding, but it has a different look and feel to it, which blends in better with the character of the community that we're trying to achieve there. So I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Moffitt, and thank you to Nadia and Carl. Can we carry item number 2?
Carried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Item number 3 is the new zoning bylaw proposed budget and revised work plan, and we have Don Herwire and Dave Weiss will have a small presentation. I think this item already went to planning committee, and today's is at ERAF. So we'll go back to item number 1, which is the amendment to an engineer's report for the East Savage Municipal Drain. I believe I saw Aaron Moore and I see Dave Ryan. Should we go to the resident directly, or Mr. Ryan, you want to inform the committee in a way what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So this is a prescribed meeting under the Drainage Act to consider the engineer's report for the East Savage Drain. So Mr. Robinson was appointed in 2016. The progress has been very much tied to the development issues surrounding the property. So this is the meeting to consider the technical aspects of his report only, not the assessments. And Mr. Robinson has a presentation if you'd like to see it. Otherwise, if it's up, I'll leave that up to you. If you'd rather, you could proceed right to the public delegations. Thank you.
So does the committee wish to have a presentation, or we can just go to the resident? I did send this report to both Councillor Kitts and Councillor Dudas, because part of it is in the in Ward 2 and part of it in Ward 19. And we heard from Councillor Kitts, and Councillor Dudas has no concern. So I'm at the wish of the committee. Would you like to see a presentation, or we can just go to the delegation? We have one speaker.
I don't think I need to see the presentation.
Okay, so Mr. Desjardins, can we have the delegation in?
The delegation is in. Mr. David Skype is there.
Okay, good morning, Dave. Mr. Sky, you're on mute. I was speaking earlier with Mr. Sky, and
I think I unmuted it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Okay, well, like 5 minutes isn't going to be well, but I'll try my best. In this 5 minutes, I'll try to dish the couple of things that I have very deep concerns about. Number one, the Savage Drain, not the East Savage Drain, the Savage Drain, the Bear Brook, the 4 rock dams that you plan to put in on this, diverting the water away from the Mare Blue. So again, all these are issues that I will try to present. The biggest issue is the fact that the Bear Brook, as it is, can't handle the water that we're diverting that way because of Orleans. It was, you know, we've got 6,000 to 8,000 acres of concrete, not a swamp that it was originally there. I will be hard pressed for you guys to find a farmer that lives along the Clark's Drain, the East Savage Drain, or which is the main concern, the Bear Brook, that will believe that the Bear Brook can handle the water that we're already diverting to it. We've already seen for the last 25 or 20 some years, Orleans, when they did these 2 man-made lakes, now 3. Now you're planning, as I see here, another storm management lake here. We have been here for 50 years. So we have seen big rains and everything before, but not till Orleans has been now developed do we get flooding in the middle of the summer. So these are some of the issues that we're addressing. Again, most of my constituents or farmers don't know much about the Zoom chat, neither do I. So this is all new to me. So I will start with, I don't know if you guys have the maps in front of you. I do. So it starts on map 1602-A1.1. That where it sorts the storm management facility, which goes down. Again, you see this little ditch that they're running on to the Trans-Canada Trail. Well, that was merely a ditch, literally not more than a foot or so deep. You're entering it onto the East Savage Drain on Mare Blue, which is literally where the Savage Drain, East Savage Drain starts as a trickle, but was leaving a whole swamp in between it to absorb it. Now you guys have already in the last, 5 years developed in there, which again, we had concerns about. Now you're going to flow water. You're developing more up onto the north side of the Navan Road. You have, this is now again, if you look on the bigger picture, it shows that these developments are going to go back into the McKinnon and the Clarkson Drain, what ends up back in the Bear Brook. Again, flooding, the Bear Brook can't handle it. So now all of a sudden, if we jump from 1602-A2 map, you see the long municipal clean out as you're planning. You have 4 rock dams all of a sudden you're popping up on our drain that we've had there since the 60s. That's only going to cause flooding on our farmland, which is, it's just not acceptable. Again, you have now again the straw dams I know are only just temporarily while they're digging it. I presume the settlement traps are just while you're digging this also, but the rock dams, I can't to me, that when you put rock in, that's sounds kind of permanent. Now, my proposal, which,
1 minute.
hello,
Sorry, you have 1 minute, David.
I can't hear you too well.
Go ahead, continue, David. We're listening.
Okay. There is in the Mare Blue, there is the Savage Drain, which is, of course, west of the East Savage Drain. It goes straight through the Mare Blue. You guys dug this in the 60s. I have, over my 40-some years here, have hiked through there, snowshoed there extensively. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beaver dams along there. And it is that Savage Municipal Drain is right level with your Mare Blue. If you were to divert the water into the Mare Blue, which is again what it's meant to do, it has dried out actually over the last 40 years that I've been hiking through it. You are now, with this new proposal, are actually diverting more water away from the natural way it was designed. It would be far more profitable to dig out those dams, clean that creek. It would have the whole Mare Blue naturally to take the water and slowly release it into the Bear Brook. Instead of cleaning out the East Savage Drain, which you're talking, which, yes, it does need maintenance, but it certainly does not need to continue up to where this new area where you're planning to do, because that will bring more water, and no matter how much you clean up that drain, it will flood. So that's why I'm confused at this. You look at on this map again of the 1602.A, you see that you're putting in proposed rock protection erosion control areas. Well, that means that you're planning to get even more water through it, that you would need those kind of erosion barriers. So
you're already over time, Dave. So we heard your message. Just wait, maybe some of our colleagues have a question for you before we ask Mr. Ryan to comment, or Mr. Robinson. Any question? Oh, I see Councillor Kitts. Madam Vice Chair, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Dave, for coming out today. Based on your presentation, I'll have some questions to staff, but I think you referenced that you're already seeing flooding on your property. So could you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, for example, now, again, like I said, I have been on my property for 50 years. We have had in those 50 years, many big rains, of 3 or 4 inches. It's only since these new developments up here, which again, you got to understand, when you have a swamp, it holds the water. When you put concrete, it doesn't hold water. It's diverted. Again, we have seen many times now that this creek is absolutely full and flooding in the middle of the summer. My father-in-law, who has land at junction right on the Bear Brook to the Savage, has his crops, the spring is normal, but middle of summer, even at this point now, I have water that's running back from the McFadden Municipal Drain, which runs off of the Savage and coming back up my ditch and running over the fields. Again, it was something I've never had till the last 10 years. Because we're getting more and more water coming up here in Orleans. And again, those lakes are not big enough to hold. You look at the basin, and you got 6,000 some acres of concrete. Water doesn't flow through concrete. It flows over it quickly.
Thanks.
So that's the thing. We've been farming here for 50 years. Some of my conglomerates have been farming here for 75 to 100 years. They've seen now more water being diverted this way, all through Navin and everything else. Like it used to dry up in the summer. It doesn't dry up anymore. It just comes flowing through. I mean, it seems like we're going to be bearing the brunt of these new developments you know, now we're going to be their new flood zone. Because no matter what you say about these lakes are not big enough. Now what the drainage area will be ours, and we will be the brunt of it. Our crops will fail because they're flooded or so forth.
Any other question, Matt?
No, that's it for me. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Matt. Stay on, Dave. Hold on. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Chair. Dave, I appreciate your comments and concerns. You suggested an alternate plan.
Yeah.
And that's can you just explain what you're proposing, like in place of yeah.
I'm proposing is, if you look at what you're doing here, you're putting a lot of barriers and breaking in and everything else. Yes, that still can divert water. But this literally, like I said, it just needs to be cleaned out. There's no rock dams or anything else you need to do. The bog itself is enormous, and has been, because again, I'm a naturalist. I go through the forest. I hike it in this, early, late fall. I snowshoe it in the winter. I know where all these dams are. And they have been there. Like the biggest one right here is literally right at that. If you look at the first stone dam that you plan to put in here, Rock Summit Dam, right near Mare Blue, literally if you go south, that's where there's a dam that's got to be at least 300 feet, if not more, in circumference. It has been there for 40 years. Ever since they built that drain, the Savage drain and the East Savage drain, they introduced beavers into here. Like they were not there. Literally, I have farmers that, were around, were, my age as I am now when this was done, saying, then they introduced beavers. It blocked it up. They never done anything with it again. So I'm not saying we're wrecking the Mare Blue. We're not. If we put water into the Mare Blue, it's actually been like, we used to go blueberry picking when 50 years ago, we wouldn't even get past my end of my property, which is literally the road allowance for 10th line, and be up to waders. Now you can get all the way pretty well up another mile in, and it's not wet. So the water has been diverted other ways. So all what I'm proposing is you clean out that drain. It will be like your lakes, but it's a much larger lake. You've got literally, if you do the rough math of the Mare Blue itself, it's about 10,000 acres.
Yep.
It's a swamp. God designed it as a swamp. It will release the water slowly. If you continue with this East Savage drain idea, and that the water is what all these new developments that you're doing on the north side of Navan Road come down the Savage drain here, it's just going to come no matter how, like, again, that lake is not that big. If you compare to the ones that they have in Orleans, it will run quickly down that drain, which will cause flooding because the Bear Brook cannot take it. If you go through the bog, it will absorb it and let it out slowly like it's designed to do. I'm just saying, God has put this here. Sorry to use God as a quote, or Mother Nature, however you wish to say it, has put this here as exactly what you guys are trying to do. And we're actually diverting water away from it and trying to get it flow quickly away.
I appreciate your comments, and as a longtime resident, I tend to respect your knowledge of the area. I guess Andy Robinson is here to, I guess, address some of the issues. I'm curious, Mr. Robinson, what your opinion is.
Can we finish first with the resident before we go?
I want to thank him for coming and giving us an alternate plan, because, as I said, I respect people who've been on the land a long time and can see the changes and mitigate and solutions that could mitigate potential problems. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Meehan. Thank you, Dave. Councillor Moffat, to the staff or to the
no to Mr. Steve. So just really briefly, just to summarize your proposal, you just want all the water dumped into the Mer Bleu?
No, it doesn't dump into the Mer Bleu, as the Mer Bleu does, as what your lakes are planned to do. It's supposed to release it slowly, but the lakes fill up very quickly and release it too quickly. Okay. I, as a farmer, did not design to put land and concrete up on top of the Mer Bleu and then float it this way. 20 some years ago, when you first had your proposal to do Orleans, there was an aqueduct that went past the Laidlaw bus station down 2 miles straight to the Otter River. Back then, the engineer said, oh no, that's not natural. We have to close that up and go down the McLennan and the Clarkson drain. Again, and we argued, yes, but we weren't supposed to have 6,000 acres of concrete, which again, doesn't hold the water like the Mer Bleu, which you guys know over the years, you've had to put foundations with styrofoam underneath the houses to keep them up because it was a swamp. A swamp releases it slowly. That's how it's designed. You took away one swamp. You were, by this proposal.
Okay, so my question, sorry, I heard you in your presentation. I heard your responses to the other members of council. It was just, and sorry if I used the word dump, that was not what you anticipated, what you're suggesting, but your outlets, your preferred outlets for the water is the Mer Bleu and not Bear Brook.
Well, yes, kind of. It's meant to release it slowly. It will hold it and release it, but that's what it's been doing for years, but it's actually been getting less water in it. So literally, as the Mer Bleu bog, you're trying to preserve and everything else, you're actually already trying to kill it because you're taking water away from it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other question to the presenter? If it's not, thank you very much, Dave, and thank you for coming up this morning to speak about this item. And now we question for staff. Councillor Meehan, you said you have a question for Mr. Robinson or Mr. Ryan?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, for Mr. Ryan, can you evaluate what our delegate is saying here this morning? Is his proposal, an alternate proposal, valid, and could it work?
So I think through you, Mr. Chair, I think I'll defer to the drainage engineer. So that the engineer was appointed by council to look at the outlet issues. He has addressed those issues downstream. That's really his raison d'etre, is to make sure there's no negative impacts downstream. So he has looked at that. So I'll let Mr. Robinson respond if that's okay.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me, thank you. The question of diverting the flow to Mer Bleu did come up in our original on-site meeting, but quite simply, you can't just divert one water course to another water course. And I appreciate there is a perception, but we've looked at this very closely, that this area does not presently drain to Mer Bleu. So, I mean, the suggestion that it's being changed is not correct. Like what has occurred in Mer Bleu over the years with respect to its being drier now than it was, I can't comment on. But basically, one needs to keep the drainage within the existing drainage basins. To divert from one drainage basin to another is not something that is recommended by various agencies, and in most instances would not be approved. But we're aware of the concern about the Bear Brook or Bear River, as it's referred to in the last engineer's report. There was an engineer's report done on Bear River municipal drain in 1990, and in that case they acknowledged that there were existing issues, including flooding at times in the summer. I say that from the point of view that how often, as has been suggested, that it's much more frequently now. That I can't comment on specifically, but it was there before. And in that case, they did two things. One is they come up with a plan to do maintenance on the Bear River municipal drain, and they provided what's called an injurious liability payment to the property owners who were impacted by flooding on their land that could not otherwise be accommodated. So what we have done as part of this report, as well as I guess at least 4 others that drain to the Bear Brook, is to make a provision that 2 things occurs. One is that an account be set up with the city to do maintenance on Bear Brook, to basically to bring it back to what was done in 1990. I don't think there's been any maintenance done or any significant maintenance in that period of time. And the other thing we have provided for is for a potential payment to the property owners who were originally given allowance in the 1990 report. Now, the peak flows coming out of the stormwater management facilities and that urban area are controlled to what they would be without the development. That's kind of a standard practice now. However, there is an increase in the total volume of runoff as a result of things that have been raised. As you know, when you put a hard surface on, there's less absorbed. So part of what we did in our report, and it's included in the appendix, we have said it's very difficult to quantify, but for the sake of coming up with a number, we figured that an allowance of 10% of what was originally given for this injurious liability charge, brought to today's dollars from the 1990 period, would be put in place again in a fund that would compensate those original property owners who were compensated on Bear Brook. So it may not be an ideal situation, but what we did try to come up with in this is, you know, the planning that has preceded this and the secondary planning and other planning to put these properties into an area to be developed. Our job was to look at how can this be accommodated in the existing drain, so that once that planning's in place, then it becomes a little more challenging to come up with the solution. So what we've done is to try to provide a reasonable solution that achieves what's been put in place from a planning point of view, and taking into consideration the concerns of the landowners that are going to be affected. So from that perspective, the other one, just to be clear on the rock dams, these are not permanent rock dams. They are just like the straw bale dams. We use rock dams in some locations just because they're a more permanent facility during construction. But once construction is completed, they will be removed along with the straw bale dams. The sediment basins will remain in place so that it provides an area where cleanout can be done in the future in these areas. So normally they're not filled back in, but the dams are all removed. So I don't know if that hopefully helps to some extent. It's not an easy project to do, I can assure you that.
Okay, is that
Well,
Councillor?
it is a response. I'm not overly confident that a reasonable solution is good enough in this case. I'll just leave that there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meehan, Councillor Kidd.
Thanks, Mr. Robinson. So you just gave us a lot of information in response to Councillor Meehan. What I think you're saying is there is a risk to the Bear Brook, but you are implementing mitigation measures that you feel will mitigate the risk to the farmers in the area. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's the intent. It will mitigate or certainly reduce the risk. And the maintenance of the drain itself, which I was done a very major maintenance in 1990. I don't think there has been anything done since then. So by providing, and it's a significant amount of money we provided for there's a total of 5 projects that are impacted. We'll let the city go in and basically duplicate the work that was done in 1990. So I think that in itself will be a real benefit. And then we did provide a small amount of compensation to those landowners who had been specifically identified as being the most impacted.
So there's mitigation measures, but it does not eliminate the risk of flooding for the adjacent farmers. That could still happen.
Well, that risk exists today. So
does it increase? Volume?
Well, there's a potential for, as I say, because of not the peak flows, they're controlled, but because the volume of any development you have when you put hard surfaces on, the total volume of water which is distributed downstream increases. But it's very difficult to quantify exactly what that would mean, whether it will mean any additional negativity or not. But we felt at this case, given the circumstances, that the best that we could provide was some additional, as I say, maintenance plus some additional compensation for the landowners who were compensated on Bear River Municipal Drain.
Okay, so they're receiving compensation. So what happens in the future if there is, let's say that volume is greater than anticipated and there's a consistent issue with flooding on these adjacent properties? What would happen? Is there recourse for those landowners?
Well, you're getting into a legal question, which is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
Or profession. It's I guess there's always recourse, but again, I can't ask. All I can say is that, we were put in a situation where there's a development, secondary planning, and a whole lot of stuff that's gone forward, and the outlet for this is the East Savage Municipal Drain, or come down the road sometime, you'll see the McKinnon Creek Municipal Drain. And in fact, out of the 3 projects out on Boundary Road, where they've already gone through, and there's compensation provided in there towards the clean out and towards some specific compensation to the people who could be impacted further. So I guess that, what their options are in the future is not something I can comment on.
Okay, no, I can appreciate that. But based on the information you have, you're comfortable that risk will be mitigated based on the parameters that you have included.
I just am a little cautious with the term mitigated.
Okay.
Because if you define it, it means no risk, and I can't say that. No.
Okay.
I think we've tried to come up with a solution that minimizes the risk, but I wouldn't stand here today and say there's absolutely no risk.
Okay. And then with respect to diverting water to Mer Bleu, I think I heard that was looked at, but the preferred option is the option you've proposed.
Yes, diverting water from one water course to another water course, appreciate, and at the on-site meeting we had, which is part of the Drainage Act process, that suggestion came up, and I think part of it was the sense that water had been diverted away from Mare Blue, but based on all of the work we've done and the mapping and planning and surveying information, that's not the case. So we've kept the drainage within its original drainage area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. So, for years, municipalities approved developments and just dumped water onto the nearest property. If there was a ditch located closely, they would just dump it onto there. I can show you countless communities in Goulburn Township where that is the case. It's a state law subdivision. There's a ditch and it drops onto someone's private property. No mitigation, no outlets, no regulation over that ditch and drainage. So we've come quite a long ways, and I know that our drainage group has been advocating for these types of situations where we use the Drainage Act as a benefit to some of these suburban impacts in rural communities. So in this case, I'm just looking at this, and Andy, you can jump in on some of the comments I might have here, but you have a stormwater facility that needs an outlet. Again, so years ago, you probably wouldn't do an outlet. You just have your stormwater facility, you'd drop it into a ditch and you'd be fine. Maybe it would just drain into the Mare Bleu. You don't have an established drain that you can work off. So if you start from scratch and have a brand new application for a municipal drain, and your outlet was the Mare Bleu, would the regulatory authorities accept that? Andy.
Got to unmute here. No, they wouldn't. I mean, and Councillor Maher, you make a very, very good point, because you've experienced it, and certainly we've seen many instances where developments went ahead and there was really no real consideration for what happens downstream. That has changed, but one of the other things that has changed in big ways is the we'll call them the environmental agencies, whether it's the Conservation Authority, the Fisheries and Oceans, Ministry of Environment, Conservation, Parks, and certainly the NCC has a lot of input and impact, where they're not an approving agency, but if their land is involved, they get very, very, very much involved. So yeah, you can't just divert something without, and I don't think you'd get approval, but that's, the agencies are there and they're very involved today.
Yeah, so I've been through this enough times with you and with staff over 11 years to know that is the likely reality as it goes through all the different authorities. So the other option, you look at the Savage Municipal Drain, which doesn't get approved if that's applied for today. It's right through the Mare Bleu. You couldn't simply extend that up to this stormwater pond, because you would need to then upgrade the Savage Municipal Drain, would you not, through the Mare Bleu?
That's very true. And again, I don't think there's any way you would get an approval from the NCC to upgrade, change, increase the capacity of the Savage Municipal Drain within Mare Bleu. It wouldn't happen today, I don't think.
So the only real option that you have, which is how your report concludes, is an extension of the East Savage branch to this stormwater pond. But the stormwater pond will be outletted at a pace that will not directly impact or heavily impact the flow of the East Savage Municipal Drain, correct?
That's correct. As I said, the principle under, that's been used, and I think it's well established at the city and elsewhere, is to use the stormwater management ponds are there to use to control the peak flows and the rate of when it's released. But if there's some increase in volume, then that normally is not an issue, because it just means that your flows at any particular stage will last a little longer, but they're not having a negative impact. In this case, because of the concerns on the Bear River Municipal Drain, we did what we could to come up with an option to try to negate any significant impact on that area.
All right. Yeah, it seems very similar to the Arbuckle municipal drain outletting into the Jock River in Richmond, where we have a 2,000 unit subdivision outletting into a stormwater pond within the floodplain. Of course, most of Richmond is within a floodplain. And then we haven't seen any impacts negatively at all from that stormwater management system into the newly renovated Arbuckle drain that outlets into the Jock River. So it seems very similar to that. And I think we haven't seen the negative impacts with that. In fact, it's worked quite well. That's not really a question. I think I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, those are good questions. Thank you, Councillor Moffat. Councillor Meehan?
But we have had reports of flooding from this particular area. I'm wondering, Mr. Robinson, in doing this report, do you have a study or do you have any facts on how many properties have been adversely affected when it comes to floodwaters? How many people have accessed that fund?
They're in the, excuse me, the drainage group could provide you with a copy of the 1990 engineer's report on the Bear River municipal drain. And in that report, I mean, the technical part, obviously, but there is a schedule of assessments or assessments, but also a schedule of allowances to the properties that were seen to be impacted as a result of the, not of kind of development that was occurring at that stage of the game, but of just the fact that the water was draining through Mara Blue and from upstream. It's a very large drainage basin, the Bear River municipal drain. So there is a schedule in there of payments. So what we're proposing is that same schedule, those same property owners would be provided with a portion of the cost that's been associated towards that, we'll call it injurious liability assessment. So that, they're the ones who were seen to be impacted at that stage. So we figured that was the best approach to looking at the impact today.
Just to clarify for me, when we've had this application, so you meet on site, or the property owners that are affected, do they join you in that meeting to have a discussion about where the drain's going to go, what the impact of the initial construction in the drain has been, what they think is the best solution as we continue forward with the development? Are they there for that?
Yes, they are. They're all the property owners, and either Aaron or Dave could speak a little more with respect.
And is Dave there? But Dave, I don't know if Dave is still with us, but was he there?
No. He's talking about Dave Ryan.
Okay, so Dave Ryan, yeah. But
yeah, sorry, Dave Ryan or Aaron. Sorry.
So is Dave
so
our
the people were invited, and there were quite a number of people who showed up at the meeting. We had two meetings, one for the East Savage and one for McKinnon's after, and there was an overlap. But we did provide in our report, we've provided a summary of the comments that we received at that meeting. So the people have an opportunity. That's the whole idea of the initial on-site meeting, is to get input from property owners. In some cases, this case is what, if they see they're going to have impact, then we'd like to know about it and see what we can do in coming up with a solution. But in other instances, it's a matter that maybe somebody would like the drain, or maybe they've got some specific issues with the drainage in their property. But they're definitely invited to the meeting, and we take notes. And as I say, in this case, we've summarized the comments in the report.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if our delegate is still here. If David.
No, we released the delegate, Councillor, but we have Dave Ryan. If you have any question for Dave Ryan.
Well, that's unfortunate, because I would love him to be able to hear the arguments.
Well, you had the opportunity, Councillor, to ask him when he was joined the meeting, and he answered you with what he can.
No, but I mean, release him. But did he understand that we were going to be discussing it, the issue?
Of course, that's why he joined us.
And why did he leave then?
I'm not sure if he left or he's still on, but I mean, we're
he's
not.
still in the attendees list. He just he's not a panelist anymore. Where we can't go back to him for questions.
No. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So if I understand correctly, then okay, this is the easiest solution. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Ryan, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that Mr. Skype was at the on-site meeting in February of 2017. And just to add a little for the benefit of the committee members, these drains are communal. We don't own municipal drains. They're provincial drains, basically. But the landowners petition for these drains. They aren't designed to never flood. They're designed for 2 to 5 year storm events, which are relatively common events, because otherwise they would be paying for the Suez Canal, so to speak, as you know. So the drain's not there to guarantee that you'll never flood. They expect to be flooded. They are there to move the water and convey the water as best as possible during rain events.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And just a quick question to Andy. Maybe you can just elaborate a little bit for the benefit of the committee. In the report itself on page 3, when you call the Sidwell report was adopted by law 1623 of the Township of Cumberland dated September 1965, all sections of the 1965 engineer's report have been incorporated under this report. So therefore, 1965 engineer's report prior. So can you just tell us a little bit more, if you don't mind, what do you mean by we incorporated all the engineer's report, all 4 of them, to this report?
Yeah, I guess just as a bit of a background as well, and Dave Ryan might want to comment this further, is that report it was in 1967. That report is still the official report and bylaws, so that if there was a requirement to do maintenance on it, that's the report that would be used. So yeah, in the wording we've used is in some instances where there may be branch drains or there may be sections of the drains that don't have to be updated in order to accommodate development, is that we will leave the old report in place for that. What we're saying here is, in essence, this report we've done now will replace the previous report. So once this is adopted, it'll have no further legal status.
Thank you very much, Mr. Any other question for Mr. Robinson, Mr. Ryan, or if it's not, so what's in the front of us? That the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend that Council adopt the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consulting Inc., entitled Amendment to the Engineer's Report for the East Savage Municipal Drain dated September 2021, and give first and second reading to the bylaw attached as document 2 to this report in accordance with section 42 and 45 of the Drainage Act of Ontario. So on the item, Carrie.
I'd like to dissent.
Okay, dissent by Councilor Meehan. Okay, so this item carry with 1 dissent. And colleagues, please, when we receive the agenda, we always have opportunity to speak with Mr. Ryan and Aaron Moore. So feel free to, through me or directly, to reach the staff, because all those municipal drain has a long history, and it'll be a beneficial to meet with our staff ahead of council or ahead of committee, because our staff is available to meet with anyone about those reports. So this item carry with 1 dissent. So we'll go to item number 3, which is the new zoning proposed budget and revised work plan for 2022 and 2024. Mr. Herwire or Mr. Weiss, I'm not sure who's going to start.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's last week.
You got your Halloween filter on, Don.
I forgot my my earbuds don't work with Zoom for some reason. Apologies. Yes, it's good to be here this morning, and we're fresh on the heels of the adoption of the official plan last week, and We certainly heard about the desire to proceed swiftly with the new zoning bylaw. So this is about as swift as we could do. So I'm going to ask both David and Carol are on the line. I think David's going to walk us through a brief presentation for the committee's benefit.
And Mr. Hawaii, before Dave Weiss comes in, you had this presentation on a planning committee as well. I just want to make sure.
That's correct. It went to planning committee last Thursday and was recommended for approval there.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do have Carol Ruddy with me as well, and we're both available to, of course, to reply to any questions or comments as we go along. So I'm just going to launch right into it. Mark, if you just go to the next slide. So in terms of just the recommendations of what we're looking for is we are seeking a total budget of $8.296 million to complete the new zoning bylaw process over the next 3 years. $1.35 million was already approved earlier last year. So we are looking for an additional funding commitment of 6.95 in order to make sure that we've got the resources and the staffing that we need to be able to undertake this project. The funding will come 90%, 10% from development charges. So there will only be 10% of it will come from the tax budget, while the other 90% will be covered as a development charge item going forward. Mark, next slide, please. So what we are seeking here today is for the approval of the development charges items that we are looking for so we can fund it. And we've also made some preliminary revisions to the high-level work plan just to adjust things in terms of schedules. There's been an awful lot of movement with respect to the official plan as it goes forward. So we'll be looking for approval on the high-level work plan as it goes forward. We will be bringing a detailed work plan and a zoning approach early in the new year that will provide much more detail on exactly how we will be rolling out the zoning process. We do have an awful lot of work to do to go through the various motions and the clean official plan copy as it moves through to really analyze and understand exactly what it is that we need to do as part of this significant and enormous task that is ahead of us. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, what we want to do is we want to prepare a zoning bylaw that is efficient, that is effective, and that is equitable. And we have two tasks. We need to implement the new official plan, and we need to make sure, of course, that we're consistent with both that document and also with the provincial policy statement. And the official plan passed a big ask. We're looking for a significant amount of urban infill and intensification that we're looking for, a minimum of 92,000 new units that we'll need to accommodate. Of which 49,000 of those need to be large household units. And the large household units has historically been the very big gap for us as a city as we go along. An awful lot of the weight has been in apartment construction and smaller units. So we're going to be looking for a significant increase in larger units, that is 2 or more bedrooms for larger households to be in. In terms of the zoning structure, we'll also be moving to a form-based approach, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. We have some very interesting hub and corridor policies in the official plan that we'll need to translate, and we'll need to do an awful lot of work to understand how we're going to provide regulations that make for a more permissive and much more inclusive environment to move it right forward. And then last but not least, we will be implementing a 21st century mapping framework, and I'm going to give you just a little snapshot of what that might look like later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So with respect to the rural area, the official plan does look at strengthening the 15-minute approach within neighborhoods, particularly the villages within the rural area. And so we will be looking at how we can develop the zoning bylaw to be supportive of that. That includes more opportunities for different land uses and permissions that are supportive of village character and are respectful of that. We'll be looking at establishing permissions for veterinary clinics, medical clinics, things like that to occur in a much more open and flexible environment. We will be looking for more diversity of housing opportunities within villages as well, again, respecting the rural context and character that they are in. We'll also be looking at the number of the policies that were laid out with respect to the industrial land strategy, and that is looking at and and having some notes with respect to the industrial and logistics land strategy that came forward as part of that official plan package, and understanding how we can strengthen and better tailor the zoning with respect to some of those key interchanges and key intermobility areas that are within that rural network. We also have significant environmentally sensitive lands that we'll need to consider and contemplate with our natural systems colleagues and make sure that we're adequately protecting those. And then we also have renewable energy generation that we'll need to consider out where we are going to put in place. Councillor Gower, I see your hand is up. I don't know if you have a quick question or if you wanted me to continue or.
Oh, please continue. I'll ask at the end. Thanks.
Okay. All right. That's fine. So let me just, these next slides really are more focused on the urban area. But they do have some pertinence to what it is that we need to do. As part of the growth management strategy, section 3 of the official plan that was passed and approved by council a couple of weeks ago, we do need to make some very big moves with respect to closing the missing middle gap. If we look at our existing zoning right now, we have a major gap between where one can actually develop an appropriate missing middle unit, and that is anywhere between 3 and 12 units. It's concentrated in a very, very small percentage of zones. And so we, as a key task in order to implement the growth management strategy that council has set out before us, we need to spread that out. And we need to create a lot more openness, a lot more fairness, and a lot more equity among the neighborhoods in terms of where that occurs. So that is going to be a huge challenge. It is going to be a very difficult challenge, and it is going to involve some very, very difficult conversations. But it is what has been, it is what we've been told to do. So that's what we're going to do, and it's also the right thing to do as well. Let's move to the next slide. In terms of the form-based approach that we're looking at, the official plan really lays out 2 things. It says that when you are near a major growth area, a hub and corridor or a transit node, or whatever the case may be, we are looking for more significant change to occur in those areas. And so that's where we would expect to see the more significant changes as neighborhoods evolve into that future vision of what the city is looking to be over the next 25 years. Inside neighborhoods, though, away from those areas, the direction from the official plan is really to keep the context more similar to where things are now. The big tool that we're going to be looking at to do that is to be flipping to a form-based approach. And that is picking up on the contextual cues that are within the neighborhood and rolling those into much more efficient and much more sensible regulations that let a neighborhood understand what it is that could conceivably be built next to them in terms of what it could look like, how big it could be, what are the basic bulk and massing and dimensions of what is there. So in terms of the key approach to that is our perspective is if we can get the form and if we can get the function right, then the density that is inside will be less important. It will always matter, but it will be less important in terms of surprises to neighbors. So a big chunk of that is removing that element of uncertainty that community associations often feel when new infill is coming into those neighborhoods. Next slide, please. When we talk about the various functional aspects, there are an awful lot of things that we expect a lot to do. We expect a lot to solve its own problems as much as reasonably can be, but a lot also functions in terms of a block, and it also functions in terms of where it sits within a neighborhood. So there are multiple levels that we need to consider those functional aspects on. There are both individual lot issues, but there are also broader issues as well in terms of stormwater and drainage that we need to consider and accommodate as well. So there's a lot of partnerships that we'll also have to work our way through with various other groups within the city, infrastructure, asset management, right-of-ways, all sorts of other partnerships that we'll be exploring as we craft this. Next slide, please. And so overall, when we talk about the official plan implementation, and there is some carryover here again with respect to the villages, is that we are looking for that transitional change to occur across our neighborhoods. So rather than as it is right now, everything being that simple, uniform, flat, basic approach. We do want to provide more context and have development that is going to be more contextually different, focused more towards those edges of the neighborhoods. While inside, residents should expect more gradual and more evolutionary change that's more consistent with what they see around them. Not the same, but more consistent or comparable with what is there. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit before about the 21st century mapping framework that we're doing. And really one of the things that we've noticed is, and it's been a big challenge for all of us, has really been that our mapping has been stuck almost in the 19th century. It's very unwieldy, it's very hard to use. The zoning is actually completely separated from the parcel fabric. So it makes analysis an incredibly tedious and difficult job for anybody, much less a community or a resident trying to understand what the rules are that apply on their particular piece of property. So we want to be able to bring a much more intelligent and analytical process. We're going to use it for the zoning bylaw. So we're going to bring the zoning directly right into the mapping and allow for much more modern approaches to modeling and analysis capability. The long-term plan is also to make this also public facing as well. So residents will have much more access to the ability to understand how their neighborhood is going to change and what the rules are that will be within the neighborhoods as well. So that's a very exciting new tool that we are going to be developing as part of this new zoning process. Next slide. Along with that mapping framework, though, also comes the ability to model what impacts might be from new development as it moves into your neighborhood. So we can develop with the new framework indicators that will actually provide the way for us to, again, numerically track what is the climate change impacts of these, what are the traffic impacts of these, what are the noise impacts of these. And as data and monitoring progresses, these are modules that we can then plug into this new land use system as it goes along. So that will provide, again, a much more transparent, much more open process for residents, community associations, industry partners, all of those to understand much more intuitively what it is that is going to be permitted under the new land use regime and to be able to work more effectively with it. Next slide, please. So in total over the next three years, we do have a lot to cover. We have, and this is just a snapshot of, I'm not going to read all of this, but we have an awful lot of stuff that we need to do. It's not just simply neighborhood zones, but we'll need to focus on the rural zones and the agricultural areas and the open space and all of those various other aspects that make a city great. Zoning touches every single lot all the way across the city in every context and in every land use. And what it really does is it sets the direction for how we are going to achieve that official plan vision going forward. A big task? Yes, it is. And that's why we're here before you today. Next slide. So in terms of where we are at, the key milestone that we needed to achieve is we needed council to approve the official plan. And now that council has done so, that really gets us to the ability to kick off and really start understanding what the zoning framework is going to look like as we move forward. So we will be bringing forward early in the next year a big moves report that will provide a very detailed summary of how we are going to approach neighborhood planning, how we are going to approach rural planning, how we are going to approach all of the various other aspects of what we are going to do over the next 3 years. That will also include with it the public engagement strategy. So that will tell residents how they can engage with the community, with the zoning, when the touch points will be that they'll be able to interact with that, but also the terms of engagement as well. There are certain things that we won't be able to move on. There are going to be a lot of things that we will. And part of this whole process is going to be ensuring that we can provide zoning that fits communities as best as we can, given, of course, the consistency requirements with the official plan, growth management strategy, and the provincial policy framework that's there. So I think with that, I think the next slide is the concluding comments, which is I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wise, and we have Councillor Gower. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Actually, David, you answered part of my question with your slide showing the modeling of the Dunrobin area. One of my questions was going to be, can we expect the same kind of modeling that's being planned for inside the urban boundary as for rural? So it looks like yes. Kind of a follow-up question to that. I think what we saw through the official plan update process was that some of the needs and interests of rural communities when it comes to consultation and engagement are different than in the urban ward. So I guess I'm asking, how have you taken that into effect, and have you worked in any differences in budget that are affected by that, or in the work plan process to reflect what we've learned from the official plan engagement and how that can be applied going forward for this next step?
Yeah, Chair, that's a great question from the councillor, and that's something that we're really working hard with respect to the public engagement strategy. We want to build from what the new official plan did, and we want to see if we can actually go beyond it. Again, the thing that we recognize again is zoning is so personal. It really, you get right down into the weeds and you start having really heated discussion over, what might seem to be inches. But of course, inches matter when you're talking about where things are at. So I think in terms of the engagement and getting down to how we're going to reach out to rural residents, that's something that we are giving a lot of thought, and we will include that within the public engagement strategy as we come forward.
Okay, well, I know my rural colleagues know much better than I do about the challenges, but we often hear at this committee from residents who haven't heard about a drainage report or haven't heard about a zoning, and I even wonder if some budget for direct mail or additional signage. Anyhow, I will defer to my other colleagues, but it is a concern to make sure that people do hear about how their communities are affected and may change. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gould. So we'll go to Vice Chair. She's going to tell us about the rural community in her area.
Well,
Vice Chair.
Councillor Gower just touched on exactly what I wanted to hit on, which was just, as you're building your consultation and coming straight out of the official plan, I think direct mail is a great suggestion. We've also heard from rural residents, Zoom, online meetings. I know obviously given the pandemic, we had no choice, but as things improve, the rural area definitely prefers in-person meetings. Sometimes during the typical working hours is also not convenient for rural residents who are working the fields during the days, so evening meetings. So just some suggestions as you build that plan, and I hope that you will be consulting with the rural councillors as you move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other question to Mr. Wise? Well, thank you very much, Dave and Don, for your presentation, and we can work together but I mean, just a little bit of comment about the drainage, or usually a mail out goes to all the resident near municipal drainage, or going to be impact one way or another with the municipal drainage. But sometimes in the rural area, some of these things, it gets a little bit overwhelmed, because obviously it's a large area and people don't necessarily drive by the white sign or something, but add in a local paper, and I think we need to talk about this. It goes a long way more than add in other paper in the core of the city, because the local paper go to every household in the area. But anyway, we can talk about this in the future when we are on. So what's in front of us today, that the Planning Committee, the Planning Committee and Agricultural Welfare Committee recommend Council, 1, to receive this information, 2, approve, and 3, approve the new zoning bylaw, and 4, approve the proposed zoning plan. So can we receive and carry this item?
Okay.
Receive and carry. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. And hi, Carol, and thank you, Carol. So with that, we have no one sign up, Mr. Clerk, to the open mic session. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and inquiries, we haven't received any other business. None. Adjournment. So our next meeting is Thursday, December the 2nd, and it's going to be a budget meeting. We're going to try to beat the record of Councillor Moffitt on this one. So be prepared, December 2nd, budget meeting.
Never,
With that,
never. 90 seconds. 90 seconds. No one will ever touch it.
you're probably right. With that, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.